You know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Am I?
No?
Well, let me begin over. The, the greatest change in nursing is when they passed up the training school. You could, regardless how down in the dumps a patient was, or how depressed, or how much they grieved for their about their illness and all, and you take a bunch of student nurses in, all dressed up in their bibs and blue uniforms and white cuffs and collars, and carry on with some of the foolishness, and that patient felt better, get better. And then the student nurse had a way about her. She could go in the room, rub their back, shake up their pillows, take the wrinkles out of their bed, put a pillow behind their back, and rub their legs, and put a pillow between their legs, and get them all fixed up, put them on the bedpan, get them ready. And then they were ready for their company at 7 o'clock. But there was always a glass of water on the table. And that was one thing that we were taught, to always have a glass of water and the call bell, so that the patient could really and truly get in touch with whoever if they needed something. And then another thing about nursing, we went on duty at 7 o'clock, and we didn't waste any time. We served breakfast. We helped the patient to feed themselves. And then we went on, we gave baths. And we really gave a bath back in those days. We soaked the feet, put their hands in water, or helped them to brush their teeth. We combed their hair. We got them fixed up. We gave them a good alcohol rub. We put them on the bedpan and got them ready so that they could carry on until lunchtime. And then all their medication was given. And the floor nurse did that. She worked. Nurses now, they don't know what real work is. They don't know. My goodness, they don't know. But anyway, then maybe if we were lucky, we got 2 hours off in the afternoon. We went up to our room, and then maybe you were told to come to class. You had to go to class. That was during your probation days. And then the student nurse got off duty at 7 o'clock at night. And then if you were on night duty, if you went on duty at 7 at night, and you worked until 7 in the morning, and you had a break for your midnight supper. And you always had a good supper. They saw to that. And then, if you put your head down on the desk, there was the supervisor, night supervisor, come along and shake you and say, wake up if you're asleep. You might have flight home. And then you went off duty at 7 in the morning with all your work completed. And if your work wasn't done, you were called back on the floor to do that work. And if your charge wasn't completed, you were supposed to complete your charge. And the patient, and operative patients was supposed to have their temperature taken. So that went on for then, and all the night that you went off of duty, and on your pillow was a cap. It says, wear this in the morning. Oh, that was a wonderful day. That was all we slept my babies that night because we got our cap. That's a wonderful time. And I used to always tell the nurses when I was senior nurse, and I'd tell them, you can wear, your shoes will get dirty, and your uniform will get splattered, with no telling what. But don't ever wear a dirty cap. That's your sign of dignity. And the nurses don't do it. Half of the RNs don't wear their caps.
Well, I know I'm about the only one at VA that wears mine.
Always wear your cap. You earned it. And that black band, oh my goodness, wasn't that wonderful
Oh,
when you
yeah.
got your black band? And everybody congratulate you and say, hey, that's really wonderful. You got your black band. It won't be long before you'll be leaving us. Mm-hmm. So those days went by, and now we're old. So what does you want to know?
Well, another thing I'd like to ask is about your first job in nursing.
Well,
What your hours were like, what you had to do.
the first job, I was going to New York to get some extra training. And so I did do about 3 or 4 months of private duty. We got $5 a day in our meals. You went on duty, if you were on day duty with the patient, you went on duty at 7 o'clock in the morning, and if you were lucky, you got a few hours off in the afternoon, but you had to get that patient comfortable so that he or she would not give any trouble to the floor while you were off. And you could go off duty for 3 hours. And then you came back and you stayed on duty at 7 o'clock. And they paid for your dinner and your supper. That was in the contract. $5 a day, your dinner and supper, or your breakfast and midnight supper. And that was, and then we had what you call 20-hour duty. There was a cot put in the patient's room, and you slept in the room with that patient and took care of him both day and night. And I don't remember if we were paid extra for that or not. I don't remember. But I know that we had that, you know. And they paid for our meals, our breakfast, dinner, and supper. That's what we got. But I don't remember if we were paid extra or not. Maybe it was $6 a day in our meals for a 20-hour duty. But you couldn't sleep in the room with the patient now.
No telling what you might get.
Isn't that the truth? So then I went to New York. And I had a sister that lived in Jersey City. She was an RN, was in the First World War. And she was in Dr. Abel's unit. My sister was. Her name was was Nell C. Burke. And she has deceased and is buried in Arlington Cemetery. So, and then I wanted to broaden myself. I wanted to go into preventive medicine. And I went to McHenry Street. That's where they brought in all the immigrants came through. They had to go to one part of McHenry Street. And I went there and I worked for 3 months. And on Saturday morning, as a rule, if I was off, I used to go down. Of course, I was homesick for Louisville. But anyway, I'd go down to the Battery and watch the big ships come in and go out. I got a lot of pleasure out of that. And then I came back and went down to my home, my mother and father. After I finished there, I went down, and I'm registered, was registered, but I'm not now. I brought my registration. I was registered in New York and New Jersey. But I went down to Clover Ford, that's my hometown, and I did a lot of beautiful work there. I delivered a couple of babies and took care of some other big problems and helped with whatever I could help with. So then I came back to Louisville, and I thought, well, I'd better go on and do something else. So I went to school at Vanderbilt in public health, U.S. public health. So after I finished there, I got a job up in the mountains. And I was in the rural section. That was in 30. I was in the rural section of the mountains, but they didn't have good roads. Well, they had a good road to the county seat, but out in the county there was no good roads or anything. And I rode horseback with the health officer. And the health nurse then made schools. You'd leave the health department anywhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, and you'd ride to the first school. And school children would be there waiting for you, and all the mamas and the babies and everybody. And we inoculated against typhoid, diphtheria, and whooping cough, and smallpox. And then we looked at all the children, looked at their heads, and did what we could for them. And then we'd try to make 3 schools in a day. And then we'd come to a shady place, with maybe there was a spring or something running. And we'd sit down under a tree and eat our lunch. A hard-boiled egg and a sandwich and a thermos full of cocoa. The health officer always liked coffee, but I think cocoa. We'd stop by a drugstore and get it for the And then we'd come on down the road and we'd laugh and have fun. And then there was a lot of times when there was a lot of sadness too, because we'd see children that had big sores, and we'd see mothers And babies we thought was kind of neglected, but it was, we, we'd help them. And I always carried a little chewing gum or something in my pocket, And then I worked in the mountains for several years in preventive medicine. But the old public health nurse now, she's vanished, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
So I worked up there, and then I went to Elliott County. And I worked there a long time. And met a lot of nice people, big people, good people, and people that had a lot of humility in them, and a lot of backbone, and a lot of courage they had to. And then I came back to Louisville. My mother and father were old, and we had a big old family house, and that was a 12-4. So I went down home, and I thought, well, their last days was not too long. So I thought, well, I'm still able to work and all. So I just went home and took care of her, And then after my father deceased, I went back. I went to Pennsylvania. I want to take a course in psychiatry. And I worked a year, took a course in psychiatry, went to school, took a course in psychiatry. And then I worked there a year. I registered in Pennsylvania. I was registered in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. But of course I've dropped all this now. And then I came back to Louisville. And I thought, well, my folks are all here, and I'll just stay in Louisville and run around. Riding horseback and all. I had a beautiful horse. But when I went up in the mountains, I didn't know, hardly know a horse's head from his tail. So, anyway, then I went in town one day, and I saw I was in the post office, and I saw that they were giving a competitive examination for federal job. I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. So I went over and asked one of the clerks, I said, what this examination will be? He said, it's going to be tomorrow in one of the rooms there at the post office. So I thought, well, that's good. So I'll just come in and take it. So I took a competitive examination, And it wasn't long until I got a call to go to Waverly Hills and in preventive medicine and I was out there 19 years. And am I doing all right?
Oh, yeah. Enjoying your reminiscing.
Well, if I leave out anything, ask me.
Okay.
So I was out there, and they used to laugh and say that I was night supervisor there for 19 years. And then when they closed Waverly, I went to, I thought, well, with my experience and all, and they said nursing homes were so bad and everything that I'd go and see what I could do in the nursing homes. So we've had one or two patients out lately from the King's Daughters. So I thought, well, I think I'll go see that over there. So I did, and I put an application in today. I got the job tomorrow. So I worked over there 5 years, and then a friend of mine was director of nurses at the King's Daughters. No, I went to that first one is wrong. I went to the Memorial. It was the old Marine Hospital. That's where I went first for my first assignment. And then I went to the King's Daughters and kind of boosted them up over there. And then I just quit nursing. I worked until I was 78.
About how long's it been since
I retired in 70. But I didn't really retire. I kept in touch with lots of doctors. I took them through internship, and I knew a lot of the doctors. And I knew Dr. Ellis so personal, and a lot of the doctors, and Dr. Salmon, and so many of the doctors I knew. And I just, that was in 70. I took my cap off.
Well, one thing I'd like to ask next is some of the changes you had noticed over the years in the different areas you worked in.
Oh my goodness. You mean in nursing?
Yeah.
Would you like a little drink of water? Whether you trained at the General, or whether you trained at St. Anthony's, or where you trained, even though you were a probationer, you were called by your Miss So-and-so. And you were chastised about it. You were reprimanded. You were told that they were missed. Yeah. And then, now, do you think that really and truly, even though they're RNs, and I don't, are you a 4-year?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't think much of these 2 years. But will that go on the record?
No.
Scratch it out.
Okay.
But they don't know how to get a patient comfortable. They don't come in at night and rub their backs and give them a drink of water and if they feel bad, wash their face with a good cold cloth. And they don't know how to get a patient comfortable. My bill, I was at the Methodist Hospital, and my bill was $4,000. I never got it back for it. But if I'd asked for it, I would have had it. But you didn't ask for it back in the old days. That was on the matter. And then the changes. Oh my goodness, the changes. The behavior of both patients and nurses. But the building of a hospital, the foundation of a hospital is their nursing service. Don't you agree?
Oh, yes.
If you don't have good nurses, and nurses that will carry out orders, and nurses that will know what to do when a simple emergency arises, that hospital, and I don't care how good a doctor is, how competent, or how skillful, or how much he puts in his work. If he doesn't have good nurses to carry out his orders, his work is all in vain. Don't you agree?
That is true.
And the nurse, and then, and I say that a floor should have a strict supervisor, one that'll lay down her rules and say, this is how it's going to be, this is how I want it, and this is how we're going to work, and this is how, from now on, our patients are going to enjoy their stay in the hospital. And we're going to, but that's all gone. I mean, you know, they'll come in and say, well, Mary Margaret said so and so, or Anne said so and so, or Elizabeth said so and so, or something. I'll say, well, who are they? Well, they're the supervisors of the floor. That's not right. That's not right. They should be this. And then I don't know. I guess that nursing has changed more in the last decade than any other vocation. From 3 years of hard work and trying to learn and be taught how to take care of a patient, how to recognize symptoms, and how to make them comfortable, that's half of the battle. Until now, we've just eliminated, that's all been forgotten. We don't have it anymore. It's just, you get up and you kind of slop over a bag, and you wash, and we'll help you with your bag, you know. That's the end of it. That's right.
So you've seen a lot of, like,
I've
less care.
I've seen big changes. And then another thing, a nurse has no power whatever. If a patient has a stuffed up nose and asks for a little medication, or if they have a case of indigestion, and maybe they'd ask for a dose of Gevucel, or maybe they'd ask for a dose of Maalox, or maybe they'd ask for a cup of aspirin or something. Well, we can't give it to you. You don't have an order for it. Well, we used to always have that privilege. We always had that privilege. I remember one time at Waverly, you know, when you're a night supervisor, a lot depends on you. And we had a patient in surgery. We used to do big surgery, move lungs and thoracolplasties and just big surgery. And we had the best doctors, Dr. Harden, Dr. Ransdell, and Dr. Polden. We had big doctors to do our surgery. And a patient was on suction, on bottles, you know, 2 bottles.
Yes.
Had a tube. And that tube came out. And that patient was suffering from shortness of breath. He was getting cyanotic. We couldn't put him under oxygen. But I knew the time I got a doctor there, that patient could decease. So I took the tube and I said, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, help me. So I wiped it off good with alcohol, and I inserted that tube. wasn't long to look for, but I was talking about and getting up, the patient got better. So I wrote Dr. Mullen, he was the director of the hospital, he was medical director, a note and told him what I'd done. And for him to, and also left a note, and I also put it on the chart, and I left a note to the doctor on the floor, the doctor in surgery, to check the patient and have the patient x-rayed in the morning to see if the Q was inserted right and if it needs to be reinserted. And Dr. Mullen told me the next day, he said, none of us could have done a better job. So that made me feel better, A lot of nice things have happened to me. I've had a lot of nice things happen. I've had some beautiful things happen, Things that I'll always remember. And some things I'd like to forget, Yeah. But I guess with it all, I've had some beautiful days in nursing. Beautiful days in nursing. So I guess it's a hard life. But nurses, why don't they let RNs use their judgment anymore about giving things?
Such as, like you mentioned, with somebody having a headache or indigestion.
Yeah, indigestion and a laxative. And I think they can give a suppository. Can you?
Well, like you said, like if we've got an order for it. So that is still kind of a restriction on judgment use.
Yeah, but they don't trust RNs anymore. Well, am I doing all right?
Oh, yeah. Next area I'd kind of like to get into would be significant changes or events that you've seen in nursing, such as like changes in practice or education, the law and how it affects nursing.
The what?
Law, how, like the Nurse Practice Act, how that's affected how we can practice nursing.
Well, I think, as I said, the greatest change in nursing, I've been telling you that all down through the line, but the greatest change in nursing, I think, is their lack of well, they have no, they're not professional like they used to be. They don't wear the cap, the RNs don't. They'll pee in somewhere there's more than that. We'll wear there's more than that. You'll take out some of that, I know. Won't you?
Yes.
Don't leave it in there about 2 years. That's kind of. But and the nurses used to have beautiful ethics. About doctors. When the doctor came on the floor, you stood up. That was terrible. You kept your seat while the doctor was there. You had to stand up. And I automatically do that now. Of course, when I was in bed, I felt like kicking something. Oh, mercy me. And as I said, the biggest change is and of course, I've never seen any of the way they chart, or anything, but I'd like to have seen some of the charting that the audience did, but I guess that wasn't for me to see. But you were supposed to chart the routine behavior of the patient and their natural behavior. And you were supposed to chart their intake and output. And you were supposed, there were so many things you were supposed to chart on a new operative case. Oh, and then I want to tell you about the new operative cases. Of course, now they take them to the recovery room, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But and they bring them back to the room. But it'd be kind of nice if the supervisor on the floor could go up to the recovery room and see some of the advancement that a patient in the recovery room would make after an operation, see about their blood pressure and different things. So it's there's been a lot of changes. Some of them have been good and some of them have been bad. But I guess with it all, it'll all come out someday. But nursing is not like it used to be. And some of it is good to get away from those big long snippy. I remember my uniform that I wore when I got my uniform was down to almost to my shoe tops. And we had to wear, now this is laughable, but we wore high top shoes and black stockings in training. But we were dressed up. Our shoes had to be polished and clean. Yeah, that was one of the things. And long hair. Well, I remember one of the girls had long hair, and she was in my class. And she went home, and while she was home, she had her hair cut, And Sister sent her home till her hair grew out. And then Sister told her to come back. Rhoda told her to come back and get her a wig, so she did. So she wore a wig. So those are the funny little things that happen. But they're all true, all true. Have I told you enough?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, what do you think has been the best change in nursing since you've started, over the years that you've been a nurse? What would you say has been the best change you have seen?
Well, I guess the best change is that they have enough of help on the floors, that they don't work one nurse to death to take care of maybe 8 or 9 or 10 patients and see and give baths and all. But Miss Meyer, they don't get baths anymore. I mean, they give you a pan of water and set you up in bed and say you take care of your bath as much as you can, and then we'll come in and help you, and they'll rub they'll wash your back for you. If they go down at one time, well, that's not washing your back. You know, that's no bad. But I think, and then another thing, I think, in nursing, you can get nourishment now when you need it. I mean, like, if you need a glass of ginger ale or something, little snack in the afternoon or the morning, you can always get that. Or after you've had a bath, if you want something to refresh you, a glass of orange juice or something, you can always get that. That's nice. The nurses were always willing to do. They're always willing to do. They want to do for you. But they have no routine. I mean, their routine is kind of bumfuzzled. I mean, you know. I think, of course, the hospitals now are so big, and everything is so automatic, and now I think a lot of it's run by computer, and but someone told me that out at one of the hospitals that now they have a computer in the nurse's station that tells you when the monitor is not acting right. So, I don't know if that's true or not. That's their faith. Is it true?
Well, VA doesn't have computers yet, but from what I understand, we'll be getting them sometime within the next year.
Well, you have a lot of nurses up there, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Quite a few.
Well, what else you want to know?
Well,
did I answer that enough?
Well, yes. Now I was going to ask you, that was what you had seen as the best change in nursing over the years. What would you say has been, well, I don't want to say the worst change, but what would you say has been the most, like, detrimental change in nursing?
Well, I think the most detrimental is, I guess I would say that the personal contact with your nurses. I mean, you know, now I thought, could I mention one hospital?
Yes.
I thought the nurses at the Methodist Hospital was the nicest group of nurses, and they had some nurses there from Spalding. Did you know Miss Dollar, Mrs. Dollar from Spalding?
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Yes.
She's at the Methodist, and she's a lovely, lovely person. Isn't she nice?
Oh, yes.
You know, and she was head nurse on the floor for an hour. And I guess the personal contact with your nurse, and then being able, and then they did the food. I mean, you know, most of the hospitals now have good food, and it was, you know, the food was, you took what they wanted to give you, but now you can pick it out from a menu, and that's nice too. And then another thing I think is, well, I think the nurses that come in the room and help you with all your problems. There's always somebody there to help you with that. And I guess the greatest change in nursing is, I can't say that nursing has gone, they've gone forward, But they've gone forward in using computers and the new charts and all these new equipments, these thermometers that you wear around your neck and take the temps and all that. I don't call that progress. I call that cutting down on the work.
Making it easier to get the job done with less patient contact.
Yeah. And that's about all I know that the greatest change. I want to ask you a question. You can put that on. What things have been cut down on? Can you all give aspirin over there?
Well, some people will, but then some won't, depending upon, like as you mentioned, like if they have an order or whatnot.
Well, I don't know.
I say most often what our doctors seem to order for, like the PRN medicines for pain or headaches, they'll go with Tylenol most often.
Most doctors now give Tylenol. Do you all give any Motrin over there?
Motrin? Yes.
Do you? Do you get any good results from it?
Most of the few people we have it on it's mostly for like arthritic joint pain. That seems to help them quite a bit.
I don't have any pain in arthritis. Well, I had trouble in this knee. I had knee trouble there. Oh my goodness sakes alive. Well, what else you want to know? Did I answer that enough?
Oh yes. Just like to get your ideas on where you think nursing may be in the year 2000.
Floating on the clouds. Oh, they'll depend on computers and, well, cut that off again. In the year 2000, the RN, she'll have a seat on the floor, and she won't do anything but sit there and run a computer or look at a computer. The nurse's aides will do the work. The LPNs will boss the nurse's aides, and the RNs will run the computers. And the patient will be just another person. That's the way I look at it. I really don't see any future for nurses. Only just, in their behavior, because their behavior now has been cut down. How many, now this will go for RNs too. Now how many nurses, really know how to give a good bath, a bed bath? Do you?
Well, I'd like to think I do, but it's been a while since I've given one myself.
I know, but I don't mean that literally now. Mm-hmm. But I mean, could you teach it? Could you take a group and set them down and say, now there's 3 patients on this floor that has to have a bed bath. Now, who in this group of nurses could give a bed bath? And I bet you'd get 3 different answers. to give a good bed, and there's a lot of patients. Now they say to get a patient up. Well, sometimes that's not always good to get a patient up. No? Mm-hmm. I don't think. Now, that's just my opinion. But but in the year 2000, oh my goodness, I think there won't be anything there won't be anything but RNs running the hospitals, and they'll have a seat, and the computers will take over. I don't know if the computers will carry bedpans or not. And I don't know what they can do, but now they're taking care of the coronary, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, do you think that's right? That the nurse sits in the desk and she's liable to doze off.
Yeah. See, I know there are several at VA who they don't want to get out on the ward and do anything or see patients.
That's the only way. That's what I say. They don't want to do work on the ward. I bet you can't get one that'll volunteer to go out on the ward. And the first thing that a nurse should do when she comes on duty is to make rounds and check her patients and see that they're in good shape for the night. And know that if they have any complaints, you know. I remember one night I went in a room making rounds. This was in Waverly. And I had several patients on that floor with post-ops. But I asked her, I said, how you feel? Oh, Miss Burke, I feel terrible. She said, I don't think I'm going to make it through the night. And I said, what? She said, I don't think I'm going to make it through the night. She said, I never ate any supper, and I didn't do this all day. I just feel terrible. I said, well, listen here. If you pass away on my time, now that's strictly forbidden. If you pass away on my time, I'll pick you up ugly. You look ugly. I said, you better not do it. So I stood there and rendered her to, and she started to laugh. I said, eat some milk, drink some milk, and eat some crackers and butter. You feel all right. She did, and she had a good. So you see, a lot of times a patient will get depressed, and what can a computer do for depression?
Nothing except add to it.
That's a good answer. Well, they should do away, and then wait till the computer thinks it's the bedpans and all. That'd be the name on it. So that's a change that I see in nursing. That nursing won't be nursing anymore. It'll just be computers, and the doctors will have the field all to themselves, and the nurses will do this themselves. It's going to be a mess. But I won't have to worry because I'm 91. You think I'm 91?
You don't act like you're 91.
Well, I am. Yeah, I graduated in 2026. I've had a beautiful nursing life. So don't get me wrong, I've had my ups and downs, and I've been on the carpet And I told Dr. Mullen that if everything was known on me, I'd have to go to jail. He said everybody bail me out. One time I was a patient at St. Joe's, and one Saturday morning, I got 9 dozen of Red Wilson. 9 dozen. I distributed them to the hospital. That was a nice day, you know, 9 dozen. I got a dozen from all the doctors. And some of the nurses. No. Those were happy days. And I had happy days up in the mountains, too. Beautiful days. I could tell you 2 or 3 funny little things that happened up there. Would you like that?
Oh, yes.
Well, did you want enough to drink? My mouth, it's dry. And that's not to go in the papers. Now, you wouldn't put it in the paper, would you?
No.
Because, you know, old nurses and all would call me up, and old friends and all, and, you know, I'd rather it didn't, you know. One time the Courier Journal sent a reporter out to Waverly Hills to do a feature on me. And I said, no. I said, that was one thing. I said, I've got a director of nurses, and there's never been a feature on her. I've got a medical director, and there's never been a feature on him. I've got several doctors here, and not one of them have had a feature on them. So I don't feel like that I should do it either. So they sent another reporter out, Mr. Miller, and he said, the Courier Journal is anxious for you to do a feature on you. I said, please tell the Courier Journal that I'm grateful because they want to do a feature on me. But I'll never agree to it because I couldn't afford to. They'd all get upset with me to think that I got the future. And when they were ahead of me, I mean the director of nurses and all those other supervisors and the medical director and all that, well, I'd have my head on it. Chopping block. Well, a funny little thing happened one day when we was making schools. This is back in 30. Long time ago. We were making schools one cold, frosty morning. And there was down the road, we saw the school teacher coming, and he was riding a mule. And he had a sack of wood, and had on this end, and the sack was divided with the saddle. And he was coming in to start a fire. He was going to hold school. So he came in and opened up the school and started the fire, and everybody got in. There was several waiting to get in, children and all. So there's when time comes for one little boy, his name was Johnny, to get his inoculation. That would have been his 3rd. He said, I ain't going to take it. And I said, oh, yes, you are. Come on up. You're a big boy. I ain't going to take it. No, I ain't going to take it. I said, come on up. And the health officer said, Dr. Coleman said, come on up, big boy. You're a big boy. You're a man. Come on up there and get this shot. Show the boys, the kids what you can do. I ain't going to do it. I ain't going to do it. And I said, I bet you will if I give you a piece of chewing gum. So I reached in the pocket, I had on writing pen. Don't tell how little. chewing gum was in there. I gave him a piece of chewing gum, and I said, come on up. So he came up, and his little old feet was full of those ball sores, and everything. And so I said, what's wrong with you, Johnny? He said, well, that old publican down there spit backer juice on my feet. And I'm going to tell my pa on him. He wanted his paw, I guess, to go down and smack. So we cleaned his feet up, washed his feet good in alcohol, peroxide and alcohol, cleaned them up, and took off some of the big scabs. He was happy. He was just chewing his chewing gum like it was the best he'd ever had. He didn't realize it might have been a month old. So those are funny things that happen, Some of the funny things, a lot of funny things happen among school kids. And we go and we teach them a new song every once in a while.
Really, the last point we wanted to cover was when you first started nursing, after you'd gotten out of school, how you found out about the Nurse Practice Act.
Oh, well, we were taught that in our training. We were taught. You mean about how to carry on with our nursing profession?
Well, about how some of the rules and regulations that had been passed through the
Well,
legislation.
we had learned the Florence Nightingale Pledge, and we had to live up to it. Did you all learn that?
See, I think either when we got our caps or when we got our pins before we graduated, we recited the Nightingale Pledge at that
Did
time.
you know it from heart?
No. we all had copies of it and stood there and read it.
Did Sister Agnes Merriam teach you?
Yes.
She's a graduate of St. Mary Elizabeth. Well, one thing you had to know was honesty. And another thing you had to know was, regardless of where you were nursing, male or female patients, you had to know to keep your mind clean and hold your profession above everything else. Another thing you had to know was your patient came first before anything else. That patient, after you had those two things, honesty and keep your mind clean, and above any, as Florence Nightingale said, to practice your profession. And then to carry out, we were taught to carry out the doctor's orders and to respect his orders and respect the doctor. And never criticize the doctor or the patient. That is another thing. And then another thing you were supposed to do was to practice your profession faithfully, with honor, and with dignity. That's right. And always be clean. Yeah. And so guess. Is anything else?
Well, I was going to ask you how you first learned about the State Nurses Association.
Oh, well, we were taught that in training, about registering, you know.
Yes,
Well, we were
becoming a
taught
member.
that. We had to register before we got out in training.
Well, at that time, like, how much were the dues?
Well, it was $1 or $2. I don't remember. It could have been 2, but it seemed like, and then, while we were in training, we registered as Red Cross nurses. We were Red Cross nurses.
Yeah.
And I registered in before we had to register before we went out and got out of training. When we were on our last lap. I think we registered before ever we got our RN after our name.
Oh, so it was
before
almost...
that, it was you were a graduate, but not an RN. And you had to register before you had that after your name, RN.
What were some of the different activities you did through the State Nurses Association?
Well, you want me to be honest with you?
Yes.
Tell you the truth, don't you? I've paid my dues. I went to some of their workshops, you know. But I never went to many of their meetings or anything. I always got a notice, but it was days that I couldn't go. And I never asked them for a favor. And I never asked St. Mary Elizabeth for a favor. And I worked there. I did maybe a few cases of private duty at St. Mary Elizabeth after I got out, and never went back. I mean, you know, I just went on about my own routine, my own self, and dug out my own future, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's about all. But nursing has now. I think the registration dues is $15, isn't it?
Yes.
Mine is 10, because I register in that. My registration number is 2442. Way back there. I bet yours is way up in 1,000.
Oh, yes. I think 46,000 something.
Oh, no. 46,000. Mine is 2442. I left St. Mary's July the 6th, 1926. An RN, a Red Cross nurse. Yeah.
I was going to ask you there when you were in the program at St. Mary's, how long was the program when you attended?
3 years.
3 years?
3 years. 3 hard years. And if you missed any time, you had to make it up too. One night, we didn't have the beds to roll up or anything, you know. We had bed, you know, those,
Like the blocks you'd put under the bed?
no. We had, well, it was a frame, you know, and it had legs back here, and you raised it up or raised it down. It was separate from the bed, elevation. And I went to lift that patient up on there and put him up. And I got a sprained leg hernia. It was an emergency. It had to be operated on. And then I lost some time on that. How's that? You know. And I should have been out in 25, in the fall of 25. I lost time. And I had to, then, and I was kind of a bad girl. I went home one time on vacation, didn't come back when I was supposed to. And sister told me to go home and stay until she called me. So she called me. So, you know, all those times are funny now, but back then it was sad. Oh, what you mean. And, but the state nursing association, of course, has changed a lot too. And, but it's changed for the better. I guess you have to think that everything that makes a change, they do it with the idea that it will be better, you know. So, I don't know now, I guess. Anyway, I had beautiful nursing days. Some of the days, I've gone off duty many times at night, crying. Yeah, don't like. You never know. You go off duty at 7 o'clock at night, and you didn't know what you'd be in over and tell you not to come back on duty in the morning. You didn't know how you were going. Back in those days, it was so strict. 9 o'clock at night, you had to be in. Yeah, unless you got a late past 10 o'clock. Yeah. And if you wasn't in at 9 o'clock, you had to explain. And that went on at every hospital. It wasn't only the Catholic hospitals. It was all the hospitals. They were strict. My sister, she graduated in 1918 to general. Yeah. And they were strict there too. Norton's was strict. And the Jewish was strict. They were all strict, you know. They had to be. And we wore long uniforms and high-top shoes and black stockings. I remember one Sunday, on Sunday, you could work, if you were working on Sunday, in the morning shift, you would have what you call the afternoon. You go off duty at, when you fed your patients or helped your patients get the trays out and get them up. And then you could go off duty and be back on duty at 4 o'clock, you know. That's on Sunday. And then they had what you call 8 hours, 3 o'clock on, you know, until 9 o'clock that year. That was a great day, you know, you get that time off. But then, in the weekday, maybe if you had a day off, I mean, your days off, well, you didn't get a day off, you got an afternoon off, one afternoon a week. You had to spend most of that in classwork. Yeah. Classwork. I remember Sister Aconata, we went to Frankfurt to take Staples. We took it in the executive room, and Governor Fields came in and addressed us, and we called us angels of mercy and all, you know. And Sister Aconata, we went over on the bus, and we stopped by and picked up St. Joe had some girls come over. Their first graduating class. And Sister Aguinaldo told us, don't you dare come back here with the general average less than 95. 95. She just dared us to come back with a general average below 95. You know, you couldn't, I'm telling you. But of course, I guess we all made it, we all got by.
Okay, the licensing examination was after you all finished school?
Well, we had to take the examination.
I mean, this was before you got out in July
Well, that's when we took the
1926.
state board. But one of the first subjects we had was nursing ethics. Did you have them?
Well, when I took state boards, it was just kind of divided up into the 5
Well,
areas.
you had a lot of true and false, didn't you?
Multiple
And
choice.
what did you do in situations, didn't you?
Yes. Or it's like they'd give you a situation and then you'd have several questions.
What is your passing average?
The class I was with, I think we had about a 90 or 92% pass rate for our group.
Well, that was pretty good. And now they feel like if they can get by with just a little bit. I think, what is the pacing average? 75 or 72?
I'm not sure what it is. I know you have to have, out of 800, you have to have, I think, 350 on each section.
I couldn't take state board now. But, well, that's been years ago. But I was coming down the hall over the King's daughters. I never did wear my uniform short. I couldn't stand it, you know. And there was a little boy there visiting his grandmother, and he saw me coming down the hall. He said, "Lady," he said, "your uniform, your dress is too long." Oh, mercy me. But I never did fight with I've had some bad fights with supervisors, though. I remember one supervisor, she has emphysema now, really critical. But she was always on me about what my nurses would leave undone. They would leave a dirty basin, or maybe they leave a someone come over or something, you know. And I'd say, to talk to you with my cap on, I'll never do it. I'd put my cap down. I'd say, now let's go after the hammer and tong. and then we'd pass each other in the hall, and just as nice, I'd say, "Good morning, Miss Taylor." She'd say, "Good morning, Miss Burke. Have a nice day." You know, we never got mad. But I mean, you know, that was professional, and this was personal. You know. Oh, there's a lot of things in nursing. A nurse can make her life so beautiful if she just wants to. She can make her life so beautiful. She can have a beautiful career if she just wants to. But she has to, above everything else, regardless of what that patient says to you, he might call you bad names and everything else. No matter what he says to him, if he puts his light on, you go in there with a smile and just like nothing had ever happened. You're supposed to forget it. You know, unless they take a gun and shoot you. So, well, is that all?
Yes.
If you could make heads or tails out of that. Was your trip worthwhile?
Oh, yes. I think this will really help us.
Well, there's nothing more beautiful than a good nurse. Than a good nurse. Just think what she can do. She can do a lot. She can do more than a doctor can. She can do more than a doctor. And a nurse's life has to be dedication. It has to be dedication. You know. And there's nothing no more beautiful than a nurse's, than a good nurse.
I don't know if you ever, the movie and then the TV show that was on a few years back called Nurse, the lady that played the role.
Played Florence Nightingale, didn't she?
Well, I forget what her name was in the show, but it was the same lady that had played the mother on the Waltons.
Mm-hmm.
It was based on a book written by a lady who had been a nurse while her husband was in medical school.
Mm-hmm.
But the TV show and the movie was so different from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And one passage I remember in the book that I thought, it's very true. This lady wrote in her book, it says, like to the effect, doctors don't really keep you alive because they're only in and out for maybe 5 minutes. But it's the nurses who are with you around the clock.
That's what I say.
They are the ones that keep you going.
That keeps you alive. You know, how many times have you gone in a room and a patient would say, oh, I've had a bad day today and I don't feel good. Is there something you can do for me? And you might stand there a few minutes and pick up his arm and just lightly say, well, your pulse is good. You might say, roll over there and let me rub your back good for you. Or maybe you could say, let me shake up your pillows or come up in bed. Or would you like to have a glass of orange juice or maybe a cup of coffee or maybe a glass of ginger ale or something that would kind of, he wasn't sick, he was depressed. You know, that's what gets wrong with patients. They get, and you know, and I've noticed here lately, well, in the last few years, that there's nothing that a doctor, I guess he wants to show his ability and his diagnostic accomplishments and whatever. Like to come in the room. Say, for instance, you've got a patient here that's terminal cancer. Nothing can be done for that patient. And that doctor will walk in the room, and they've just found it out, you know, through X-ray examination. And he comes in the room and say, well, your X-rays and all show that really and truly there's not much can be done to help you because you have terminal cancer, but we'll do what we can to make you comfortable. Now that immediately that patient gives up hope. He's no more good. He lives for the day when he'll close his eyes. Nothing you could do for him would get him out of that state of depression because he knows he's going to die. But if you came in the room and you said to that patient, well, really and truly, your X-rays was not quite as good as we thought it was going to be. But there's no reason why that with good care and all, that you couldn't live a good normal life for ever so long. You know, and when that helped that patient, you know, now, just me, for example, I was in the hospital, and Dr. Ellis is a personal friend of mine. And Dr. Overstreet and all those doctors, you know. But Dr. Hauser came in that morning, and he had a young doctor with him. And he said, "What's wrong with this patient, doctor?" He says, "Well, now, evidently he thought I couldn't hear him. But I don't." He says, "She's got so much wrong with her, we don't know what to diagnose." Now, he said that, you know, but I took it with a grain of salt because I knew what was wrong. What was my trouble was this knee. They never did find out. I was smart as they were. They never did find out what was wrong with it. And then I developed thrombosis phlebitis. And then, you know, and I thought, well, you're good if you think I don't know what's wrong with me, because I've known for years and I had to have you learn it. And physical thing. But, you know, and if I'd been in a depressive state, but I didn't let that depress me. But there's one of the resident chairs, she has a colostomy, and I think she's had it for maybe a year, 18 months, longer than that. And she went into the doctor, and she can sit down and eat a plate of food, and all. And the doctor told her, this last trip in, he says, "Well, there's not anything can be done for you unless let's put you on, give you chemotherapy. That cancer is making progress." Now, he needn't have told her that. No, he could have said, "I think with good care and all, you've got some long, happy days ahead of you." Why didn't he say that?
I don't know.
Well, they like to bust their vest buttons like that.
I mean, there's one thing with being truthful. Then there's another
Well,
aspect of
that wasn't
trying
being
to cushion the
untruthful.
blow, too.
That wasn't being untruthful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it was? With good care, she would have. And then, do you think it was being right to go in and tell that patient she had terminal cancer and her days were numbered? No, I don't think that's right.
It's one thing telling the truth, but another aspect of whether you knock the wind out of somebody's sails and give them no hope.
Well, who is it could stand something like that? Could you?
I don't think I could.
No.
I don't think very many people could.
Well, I'm a Catholic. I want to go to confession.
Be enough to make you think you're going tonight or something.
Well, you know, those, and that just, you just live for the day when you hold your hands. You know, I don't believe in that. I'm going to start to preach on that. I hadn't, at the Methodists, they said we ought to sign a petition to keep you here with us. I had a lot of fun, you know. I never let my life get sad. I've had a lot of sadness. Oh, I've had a lot of sadness. But I had my moments, you know. for that. And they wouldn't want me going around all sad. I've given up all my brothers and sisters, my mother and father, you know. But I have it nice. I've had a nice living, nice social security. If Reagan don't take it away from me.
I think he's trying.
Is he going to close the Veterans Hospital?
Well, we've had a lot of our beds more or less on hold for this year. But this summer we're trying to cut back on who we could admit or for what.
Do you keep them now as long as you used to keep them? And I had my brother, my youngest brother, he was in World War I. He died over there.
It seems like a lot of people used to stay forever and a day, but now the stays seem to be a little shorter.
You were not in the war, were you? You're not old enough.
No, ma'am.
Well, I had a lot of respect for Miss Paul. That was created when I was in training. Sister Agnes Mary was there, and Sister Williford. Do you know her?
I don't believe so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe so.
And Sister, well, some of them go by their first name, don't they?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Sister Mary Campbell, you know her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this interview was conducted by Meyer. The interviewee was Dorothy Burke, who lives in the Sacred Heart Academy home on Payne Street in Louisville. Miss Burke was born in 1892. She attended the St. Mary's and Elizabeth's Nursing School when it was located on 12th Street from the years, she graduated in July of 1926 and started in approximately 1922. She got her license in 1926.